Hi, everyone. Welcome to our fourth and final session of our virtual CTW series number 2. Today, we're going to be focusing on succession planning for your organization. Our presenter will be Jennifer Gregg. Jennifer is a USTA master trainer, as well as the CEO of USTA South Carolina. Jennifer, it's all yours.
Hey, thank you, Michael. And thanks, Darren, for both of you guys having me on for this one. This is great. It's funny because this particular topic, when we first talked about it, we were my organization was already kind of starting to do some of this stuff. So it was really kind of perfect timing because it made me also look a little bit deeper into the topic. So since we only have an hour and it's not in person, we've got some things that I would like to hear from you guys about, but most of it's going to be just kind of me chatting. But if you have a question or anything like that, please raise your hand or throw it in the chat. And Michael, I'm sure you'll help me pay attention to that, correct?
Absolutely.
And, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So succession planning. First, I want to know a little bit about you guys. If it's possible, to let me know a little bit about yourself. Some of you guys can write in the chat if somebody wants to unmute and say and answer these questions. I'm just trying to get a general idea of the size of the groups that we have here. Michael, how many people are on right now? 14? Well, 11, counting us. Okay, perfect. All right, well, since it's 11 people, let's go ahead and put it in the chat, and I'm just going to open it up and kind of look through it. So if you can just say what area you're from, what your board size is, if you have any staff, and then kind of the volunteer numbers, I would appreciate it. Does everybody know how to get to the chat button? For me, it's at the top of my screen.
Yeah, and for others, it may be at the bottom if you use your cursor to highlight on there on the chat.
Yeah.
Just click on it and.
Hi, hey, Alan Jensen, I see. Nice note. Thank you. All right, so, all right. Nothing's coming through yet. Are you sure we have people on here?
Yeah, I was trying to say, don't be shy. There we go.
Okay.
So Jim Ham, 12 board members, staff 1, volunteers 700. They're in the Metro Atlanta area.
Okay, perfect.
Anyone else?
Anybody else want to give their take? For some reason, there we go. It's populating now. Okay, perfect. Okay, good. This just helps me out to know because we've got 10 members, SATA, board, 2 staff. Okay, good. So that's basically what I needed to find out because I didn't want to talk just one way, whether it's about volunteers or about staff or whatnot. So that helps me out a lot. And in all honesty, it doesn't matter whether you're in a city, a town, a county, unincorporated area. People are people, and we're still looking for them, right, to help fill spots. So I'm going to close out that chat for right now and keep moving. So thanks for that information. But this is something I really need you to do in the chat, and this is for real. Succession planning. When you hear that term, what does it mean to you? So the question is, what does it mean to me? For me, as soon as I heard it a couple of years ago, I just thought, oh my God, that's a lot of hard work. But go ahead in the chat and let me know how you feel about succession planning, what you think it means to you, and also what it means to your organization, so that we can just get a little quick feel of that one. And Michael, my screen is still sharing fine?
Yes.
Okay. So what does succession planning mean to you and to your organization? And I promise at some point in time, we will actually get started and me not have you type in a chat. All right, Mark, plan for the future. Be able to continue operations as people come and go. Perfect. Anybody else with some thoughts?
Yeah, Jim Ham did sustainability, preparing and planning for the inevitable. Next person up.
Right.
Debbie Kennedy, making sure that if one staff member leaves the organization, can still operate and move forward in a productive manner. Let's see, smooth transition from board term to board term, short-term and long-term goals for growth and finances from Mary Kay. Leslie shared an organized process to enable our organization to continue to thrive and grow, bringing in new people and not getting over dependent on a few people.
Oh my God, Michael, I think they could teach the class. So perfect. This will be good. All right. Again, that is awesome. So perfect. I'm glad, because a lot of people think that some don't think succession planning is important. It truly, truly is, because I can speak volumes for when I walked into this office 4 years ago, that because of the way it changed, not because of the people or anything like that, just the way it changed, they weren't prepared. They didn't know the ins and outs of how to do certain things, certain vital parts of the organization and the jobs and the just even payroll. It was crazy. So we had to kind of find all that stuff again. So good. Again, it's really, really important. One of the things that I'm hoping that this will do for you guys is to help you understand about the overview, the essential steps. And if anybody has watched the show Succession on HBO Max, we do not want your organizations to wind up like that, where everybody's fighting for one spot. You know, some people are good, some people are bad, most of them are bad. But again, we just don't want organizations to wind up like that. So we're just going to kind of run through this presentation, and at any point in time, raise your hand, ask a question. Or Michael, however you want to do it on the chat. If you see something come through, you can stop me. I'll just kind of go through, since we only have an hour. If you have not seen the HBO Max show, I would highly suggest it. It's pretty good. All right. So succession planning, the what? Proactively identifying, recruiting, and developing future organizational leaders. This is not just about your board. This is not just about committees. This is not just about staff. It's about all of it. And I want to keep that in mind, because as we go through things, I look at us recruiting volunteers as possible staff members down the line if somebody were to leave as well. It's not just about one route for any one person coming into your organization. But that's, you know, we've got 13 staff members, and that's what we're looking for is eventually subject matter experts that can help us on that level. But again, the why. It's going to allow you, I think somebody mentioned this earlier, allow you to keep moving, to keep going forward, to keep all those things that we actually need to be able to do and function properly as an organization, be it the board, be it a committee, or be it the staff, to succeed. And for anybody that's coming into the organization to feel successful as well. Because that's the number one thing where you lose volunteers, especially, is if they don't feel successful or that they're actually giving anything back to the organization. So we're going to look at the different concepts within this to create a framework that will help mitigate these risks of the organization. And for those of you with, you know, budgets where you're getting audited and things like that from the IRS, and you're doing your 990s and you're doing all the proper fiscal responsibilities, this is a huge thing too, because these little steps that we go through each year that is required by law, somebody needs to know what's going on so that you can always kind of have the little I's dotted and the T's crossed to make sure that everything's happening the right way. So that's the overview. Going into the steps. So we're going to look at assessing, recruiting, and then developing with a succession plan. Apparently I can't say that too fast. All right, assessing. So the first thing that we want to assess is looking at significant business needs, challenges, or trends over the next year to 5 years. This isn't a strategic plan. This isn't talking about your mission. This is truly looking at what's going on around you to understand what's going on around your organization, to understand what is going to affect you as an organization, getting not only the participants you want and things like that, but also the people that you need to fulfill those positions. One of the big things we're having right now, and I'm assuming this is happening in Georgia as well, we don't have enough people to teach tennis. Tennis exploded during COVID. We were not prepared for having somebody on every court to teach tennis. So that's one of the things that we missed going into COVID. COVID is another example. That's a huge thing that nobody expected. But if you look at how what that has affected as far as growth in certain areas, loss of population in others, the amenities that need to change due to the migration of people throughout the United States, throughout Georgia, throughout wherever they're coming from. I know that for us, Charleston and Greenville got hit really hard with additional people, but those are some of the things that you just need to be able to pay attention to, so that when you're looking at your future board, volunteer crew, or staff, you've got people that will have the right skill sets and things like that. Again, if I'm going too fast, just let me know, but one Diet Dr. Pepper down and another one open, so you never know what happens. All right, so another one, what you want to do is also ID the positions that are critical to your association. This kind of goes in line with looking at the trends, seeing what's happening. One of the big things here in South Carolina is advocacy. We've realized we have to do more with advocacy on the local grassroots level, the state level, and in between, anywhere from wherever. So what are the critical positions that we need to fill? So I need to look ahead at my board members, at my volunteers, even at some staff positions, and look at, okay, I've got to think about advocacy now when I kind of roll into planning for the next 1 to 5 years. That's our example. There's others along the way as well. The other is the competencies. So we can have a position and we think it's important, but what are the actual competencies and skill sets that we need from people in the future for either now or going forward? And it could be something as simple as we lost a longtime treasurer this past board turnover. She's still on the board, still is helping, but she didn't want to be treasurer anymore. And she had been it for a couple terms. She had so much knowledge and so much information that when we were looking to replace, people wanted to replace her. There was no way we could. She's a CPA, she's got all these degrees in accounting and blah, blah, blah. So we finally had to look at it from a different point of view. What is it we actually need from the treasurer? And then what can we teach them? And so those were some situations that we looked into for that particular position in going forward with the succession plan for that. It worked out really well. The past treasurer is working with the now treasurer, bringing her up to speed on many things that she was very knowledgeable, but there's just a lot of accounting that the average Joe or Joanne's not going to know. So those are some competencies and things that we looked at to make sure that we were going to move forward with the correct person in that position when the slate was put down. All right, we're also going to look at categorizing the competency and skill gaps within the organization. So a little bit similar to what I just talked about, except now you're really truly going to look and say, okay, we've got a great board, we've got great volunteers, but you know, for us, no one did advocacy. That was not anyone's job. That was not anybody's forte here in South Carolina. So what is it that we're missing? What do we need to go out and search for? What do we need to find in our volunteers, in our next board members, in our next staff members? And so we did a pretty hard look at everyone's skills. It's not grading anybody. It's not, you know, saying that someone's not right or not correct in the skill sets that they have. It's literally just trying to figure out what are we missing that will make us a better organization. So this is great for you to start thinking ahead of the time, back to that 1 to 5 year trends and changes that you see in the area around you, just to kind of keep that in mind. We also want to develop position profiles that fit the need of the organization. So that follows in line with looking at what you need, looking at the skill sets that maybe are missing, and then truly making position profiles. They're not job description, they're position profiles, especially for volunteers and board members. But you know, if we're talking staff members, if we're looking ahead that you may have an executive director or a director of, you know, sorry, Michael, community tennis that might be retiring in a couple years or whatever it is, you know, you want to be prepared. You don't want someone that's been there for 25 years walking out the door with all that information. So you've got to get those position profiles and that kind of stuff set up so that you can pull it together and not be running around kind of like crazy trying to figure it all out. All right, recruitment. I'm talking a lot faster than I normally do in person, so sorry about that. I'm trying to slow it down, but nobody minds an extra 5 minutes of their life back, right? All right, so recruitment. Seriously, casting the net. I'm going to say this, and I love the USTA. I've been with the USTA for a long time, but we tend not to step outside of our little world sometimes when we're looking for people. And I did it when I was in Mid-Atlantic for many years. I knew who to call. I knew who would say yes, you know, this and that. Now I think that, especially with the new tennis players that are coming in, the, you know, just people that are just new to our sport, new to getting involved, people that have changed the way that they work. Now they have a little bit more time, maybe because they don't have their commutes and things like that. It's time to look for what we're looking, what we need. Go back to those competencies, go back to the things that we're missing in the organization. Don't just rely on it being an avid 4.0 tennis player. You know, go find those people that maybe happen to like tennis or have an inkling of liking tennis, but have a skill set that you need, because in essence, your organization needs many skill sets, legal, financial, and whatnot, that oftentimes doesn't come with somebody being the perfect tennis player. So we looked at it from a position of going around and trying to look at local community organizers and people like that that would then help us with different aspects of our organization and bring in different skill sets for our recruiting. That started about 4 years ago, and it's really worked out. We've got a couple good new board members. They do either like tennis or play it a little bit, but what they want to be involved with is, believe it or not, are bylaws and, government governance documents and things like that, because that's the thing that they like the most. So again, we just casted a wider net to recruit. We went outside of our typical family members. Okay, sourcing talent within the organization. So sounds like I'm saying exactly opposite of what I just said. However, don't overlook some people. We've all got boards where I've got a board of 14. Out of that 14, 5 of them are on the executive committee. The other 9 are, some of them are very active and some of them are not. It's just the way boards work. It's the way groups of people work. But are there people in there that are quiet, that are not necessarily ones that we would look at for XYZ, but could do the other ABCs or whatnot that we need to have done? So we started to actually kind of ask more questions of our board members, find out what they really want to do. We've always talked about how don't make the accountant that's the accountant in real life be your treasurer. However, sometimes that's the best thing to do. But again, find out the skill sets that some of these people have that we just don't know, because, we know they're the administrator at a local college, but what does that mean? How can we source the talent within our organization to figure out who might be the best next president or vice president or, committee chair? All right. Oops, sorry, I hit 2 buttons at once. So building up your talent pool, that's work. That means that you as a leader of your organization, you as the head of whatever it is, whether it's your committee, whether it's your board, whether it's the staff, you need to be out meeting and greeting people. I just played tennis just before I walked into this one. Thank God I was able to shower real quick. But the 2 ladies that we played against wanted immediately to volunteer when they realized who we were and what our team was. And they were like, oh my God, we've always wanted to volunteer for the USTA. And we're like, how do we not know this? You're league players, that kind of thing. I feel very responsible for going out and meeting people, immediately talking about the different opportunities that we have to offer, trying to figure out where they'll fit. It does take effort. It does take energy. But if you don't have the time to do that as a leader of your organization, find someone that does. You may not be the one that actually wants to go out and chit chat with people. Find somebody that does. Selling your organization to a volunteer is just as important as selling it to a person that wants to play tennis, because you're trying to create that pool that's needed for the future of your organization. And then implementing a referral program. I think this is really pretty big. If you have good volunteers, good staff members that you trust in their judgment, if they are referring people, you can come up with different things. It can be, prizes for X amount. It can be, if we have, say we have one big event and we need an extra 25 volunteers, we'll do a lot of referral programs. We'll ask someone to bring a friend. We'll ask someone to give us some names and whatnot. We just went through this with getting an intern. We did a referral program that got us a great intern, somebody that we would have never thought of just because they'd gone out of state for school, but they had grown up in South Carolina playing. So now we've got her in as an intern. That's great. She's 19. We just also hired a new person that was our intern 3 years ago. So this referral program has really worked off well for us as far as getting people into the pipeline that are really good. So recruitment is a major component of getting ready for succession. All right. So I was going to open it up at this point in time in the presentation for anybody else that had any ideas on the assessment, the recruitment. Is that legal, Michael? Are we doing that? Or do you want to let them raise their hand and talk, or how do you want to handle it?
Either way, I don't think we have a raise our hand feature. So either chat or just speak.
All right. Anybody with questions about the assessing or the recruiting? Or anybody with some thoughts or comments? Any successes that you've had? And I'm okay with silence.
Hey, Jen, I'll jump in. So I've had a lot of great success with tennis on campus. Students because and leaders in tennis on campus, because by doing that, they've shown some leadership skills at a young age, organizational skills, and some motivation and drive. So I've hired a few over the last two jobs. I've had a few TOC, and we got some TOC people on our staff here, and 100% they've been winners. So that could be a potential person to look at if you're looking to bring somebody into your organization, because they've already shown a leadership ability and the ability to self-start at a young age.
Oh, that's awesome, Darren. Thank you. Yeah, we also had that with JTT back in the day when especially with the high school age kids, when they would take over the team management from their parents. We realized, okay, those are the future leaders of this organization because they love what they're doing. All right, I think we've got something in the chat box, maybe. Let's look.
I'm just giving some of the data of what their size of their board was.
Gotcha. Okay.
I will say we've got a few of our CTAs who have youth junior leadership development programs.
Perfect.
And that, that they help develop, and some of those do turn around and become their volunteers and on their board as well.
Yeah, I like that idea. We do a junior player committee, and it's all kids 12 to 18. We try to do 14 to 18, but we had a couple younger ones. And one of their big things is social media. We want them to, pump us up on social media, but they also then get hours for their high schools and things like that. But again, it's looking at the future. Who is that person in 5 years from now, after the 18-year-old, after they've graduated college? What are they going to want to do? That's like the intern that just became a staff member here. He loved us, wanted to work for us 2 years ago. We didn't have a job for him, and now look, it all worked out. Anybody else want to speak?
Yeah, this is Skip Patterson. I'm with NETGA, and we're second year into succession planning. But two questions is one. Last year when we went out and recruited, we ended up with more candidates than we had board positions. So we created sort of an advisory board position just to put some people in waiting. And I just wonder, have you seen that be successful or not, and how to really manage that? And then the second question is, we also put in a board member responsibility list. We make them sign a letter.
Right.
And we review that, and we have some people that haven't done the safe play, or they're not attending the meetings regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder how you handle that with the board members.
Right.
Our thoughts are, we kind of tell them, they're committed, but maybe we should move them to an advisory board position versus, staying on the board.
Right. No, the two good things. So the biggest thing with a board or volunteers or, even staff, but staff is a little different, because whenever you're dealing with people, they have to be accountable for, what they said they would do, but then someone has to hold them accountable. So that makes it hard. So we have had some issues. Personally, we've had some issues with attendance at board meetings and things like that. So we finally put in an attendance policy. And we tell them, I actually had to call a board member not too long ago and say, hey, if you don't make this call, you've just now hit your mark. And here we go. We've got to talk about what you're going to do, what we're going to have to do, and that kind of stuff. And that was our first one after our attendance policy was put in. I like the fact of having that advisory board of the people that you found that were good and possible candidates. Because also that puts a little bit more of a fire under the people that are on the board right now. You have someone to replace them if they're not willing and able to work. But I love that advisory concept, because they're not necessarily going to be involved with the board work, but they're there to be called on as subject matter experts, I would assume. And then also the fact is they're getting to see the inner workings of the organization from a different perspective than some people that sign up for the board that didn't actually know what they were getting into, but still had a skill set that you might want. And then when they get there, they're like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. So this way you're actually getting people to see it even prior to being an at-large member or anything like that. We personally had an issue a term ago or whatever, where we had a new person come in that had great skills. Everything was good. They got appointed to the board. And literally about 6 months in, they really truly said, this doesn't fit. And we're like, okay, so if it doesn't fit, we're not going to play. Appreciate you being honest. Have a nice day, and they're still involved with us in some way. The good thing is at that point in time, we had at-large or presidential appointees. We no longer have that, but we did at that point, and we were able to pull in one of the presidential appointees. So I really like that idea, because one of the things we'll talk about in the development stage is about letting people see what the future holds for them as they look at these different positions. There's a lot of people that sign up and want to be president of a USTA state office or even a section. And then when they get in there, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that has to happen. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made. I'm not saying it's not all, it's that it's all work, but there's some fun, but there's things that happen. And they've got to be ready and understanding that that's the responsibility that they took on. It's not just about showing up at the annual meeting and waving. It is literally about all the bazillion things right beforehand. So that's I think, Skip, that's a great idea. Thanks for sharing that.
And one other question, we did the matrix where we created, competencies or skills that we thought we needed to have on our board. And then we assessed what we had, and then went out and purposely recruited people with financial skill sets, IT skill sets. But do you have a list of what a CTA should consider in the different skill sets to have on your board?
I do. We have some general stuff, and then also, honestly, like even if you Google it, they'll have different other competencies and things like that. But the national office did a huge competency thing many moons ago that was actually pretty good. But yeah, we can kind of talk separately, or I can send you some stuff, or you can email me. But honestly, it goes back to that number one thing we talked about. What are the trends? What is happening in your area that's going to affect your organization? And then boom, what do I need? And for us, like the advocacy example, it was huge. We didn't have anybody going to we didn't know council members. We didn't know, state anybody, county this, county that. And the pickleballers, God love them, we're all in there. And finally, we're like, okay, if their voice is getting heard, our voice has to be heard as well. And so we went back to the drawing board and looked at those kind of competencies. So honestly, it was looking at what we needed as an organization. But happy to chat with you about that on a side note.
Okay, I'll give you a call.
Sure. Anybody else with some thoughts? We'd love to hear. I know some people like to type more than speak, but again, I usually like to have a more interactive session. But
Jim, we do have one in the chat. Diane Hess from Augusta said, as for the treasurer position, we changed our treasurer to a board appointed position, so they were not under term limits and can specifically be recruited for their skill level.
Perfect. I like that idea. You know what, honestly, it kind of gets, it's smart in many ways. If our treasurer had not been the treasurer that it was at the point when I came in, we wouldn't have known basically she was running the office before I walked in the door. Because she handled all the stuff. So that's brilliant. And then that way, if there's an issue with the treasurer, it's an appointed position. I mean, you don't have to go through all the bylaw craziness and the voting and all that stuff. It's okay, you're done. I like that a lot, very much so. And then you can find the people that are willing to use their skill sets as an accountant, as a CPA, as a whatever, that are willing to give that to the organization. Again, our past treasurer, she's still on the board, so she still has that smartness and the skill sets that she's adding, but she also had kids that grew up through the junior tournaments and played in college at Vanderbilt and things like that. So she knew a whole nother side. One thing we've seen recently is a big push to make the secretary and treasurer position the same. but then the secretary position not be what it used to be, which is just taking minutes. It's basically just having that you have a secretary / treasurer, and then having someone else that literally is dedicated to taking minutes that doesn't have to be in the conversation. Because oftentimes when you're busy over there taking notes, you don't have time to look up and even add into the conversation. So that's one thing we've seen as well. So that's another way to change your organization and then look for different competencies. Anybody else? Going once. All right. Okay. If you think of something, feel free. Perfect. All right. We're going to go into, oh, my slides would work. There we go. Developing. All right. So we're back to competencies. So we've talked about position profiles. We've talked about competencies. We've talked about what you need as an organization, what you're missing. So now we've got some people. We've found some people. So the first thing I did when I walked in the door here is I started getting to know more and more of the volunteer base so that I could see who potentially, personally, and I have no control over this. I don't get a vote. I would love it, but I don't. I have looked ahead at who I think should be president for seriously the next 3 to 4 terms of what we have. What I know is in the waiting area. I know people that would be really good at this. Some of them don't have the background that others do as far as legal or jobs or things like that, but they have other things that they offer, right? So my thing is as I see the recruits that we've gotten, the people that have come on our board, the people that are really dedicated, that have the right intention and the fiduciary responsibilities and believe in loyalty of, service and care and whatnot, duty of loyalty, duty of care. I go to them and I ask them to be on different committees that will then grow their competencies in these different areas. So if I've got somebody that's really good at financials, but I also think that they need to understand a little bit more about governance, boom, I ask them if they'll be on the bylaw and policies committee. So they can see that's the thing that shapes our organizations, those policies and those bylaws. So if they get in there and they start to understand those and understand those processes, they also can not only become more knowledgeable and more beneficial to the organization, but they can also raise their hand and say, no, this isn't for me. I do not want to have to talk about this stuff. I want to stay on this path. And that's fair. And that's happened to me before when I've been working with different recruits and whatnot. Same goes for people that are really good at bylaws and policies and things like that. I pull them into the budget committee so they can actually see the internal workings of what goes on there. I try to share as much information with them as possible so that as they're going through the system, they can see the good and the bad of getting knee deep into a board position that actually requires, a Sunday night phone call at 9 because something horrible's happened and we've got to discuss it, So that's one of the things that we worked on here. And I did also within my volunteer duties with the ATP event that I work on, basically looking ahead, trying to develop people that are regular volunteers to make sure they can come up to the committee chair level when it's time for somebody to move on. All right. Create informative onboarding for all members. This is truly important, whether it's staff, volunteers, or whatnot. They need to know the whole of the organization. They need to understand it. We still probably have some volunteers on some committees that, not everybody reads everything, right? So we know that some people don't quite get sometimes the hierarchy because they'll ask a question, thinking that we can determine, XYZ for us in South Carolina. I'm like, well, actually that falls under Southern, or that falls under the national office. So those are the things. If you continue to try to onboard and to give them as much information as possible, it arms them with knowledge, which is a great thing. All right. So what Skip just said is a great way to look at it. Create training and learning opportunities in line with the positions. So what is it that they're doing? There's a cheese co-op in Vermont where Cabot's from. And they actually, there's a co-op of farmers. And what they determined was, as they moved through things, they needed to start teaching the teenagers, the younger kids that were going to be taking over the family farms, of what to do. So they literally created these shadow boards, a junior board, and whatever the decisions were being made by the larger board, the real true board, they would give those things to the junior board and let them kind of work through it and do kind of mock trial. And it actually has worked out really well for them, because it gets most of those kids really, truly ready to take on that position, take on the family farms, understand the concept of the co-op and all that. I'm not suggesting that for everybody here on the call. That's a lot of work, but also, this opportunity right now, creating the training and learning opportunities. I'm sure Michael and crew would help if there are things that you guys need specific to your organization. If they can't do it for you, they know where to find it. And there's just all sorts of ways to make sure everybody understands what's happening in the organization and for those particular positions. The last thing you want to do is not have, if you work on a basis of your vice president is your presumptive president, the last thing you want to have is those two not talking or sharing information. All right. So to that, functioning in areas of the incumbent's position, what can that VP do? What can that person that most likely is going to be the treasurer next year do with the treasurer that's in right now? What can that staff member do that, maybe being moved up into a director position as somebody retires or moves on to something else? What can you do to make sure that people understand what's been going on and to actually see some of the information? Have them help with some of the lesser duties of a president, if that's the case, if you know that that's the person that's going to be coming in. I mean, I think most of our organizations have worked on the fact that the VP typically moves in. We've changed our bylaws a little bit and the way the voting happens, so that's not a definite anymore for us, but that's why we try to keep, well, I should say and that's why we try to keep all the executive committee members involved in different decisions and things like that, so that they truly could step into that president's position if they're called upon to do it by the nominating committee. All right, huge. And the worst thing in the world to do is write down everything anybody does, right? So hopefully you all have steps and things that you have about certain processes and things like that to do with, the financials and whatnot, and you have policies and all that. But, I came in and we didn't even have a list of like our award winners. So we didn't even know who had won the awards. We're not sure where that list went, but, it could be on the computer that, unfortunately wasn't here when I got here. But there were things like that, the information, the little things. Honestly, if you've got somebody that's got passwords to your QuickBooks account and things like that, you got to get all that stuff too. It's just everything. It's little things. You can't capture all the knowledge, of course, because a lot of it is just in them and whatnot, but having conversations with people as they move through their process of being a volunteer and into the retirement part of volunteering or leaving the office as a staff member, it's really good to sit down and chat with them. Brainstorm or let them just kind of flow with just let the brain move and kind of let it just flow out, and then you can kind of type it up and then figure out different things. We finally have set up some processes here that, the whole thing, if I were to hit by a UPS truck or something like that, that everybody kind of knows where it is. One of the things we didn't know our financial flow as far as monthly payments because of the way the accounting was done. So now we actually have that not only in our QuickBooks system, but also in a pretty easy to read. If the board wants to see what our debts are each month, we can literally list what we have to pay for, shows when things are due and that kind of stuff. It was weird things that we found that we needed to put together that no one grabbed from the person leaving my position. And we've learned from it since. All right. Huge here, mentoring and coaching opportunities. We've got a lot of, the whole concept right now within the workforce and also volunteer force is the age. So the ages are very different. You know, the millennials, the Gen Z, the Gen X, all that. We need to give people an opportunity, a chance to be able to perform and do so that they can get picked and be put into the succession planning. But honestly, taking some time to mentor and coach, giving tips, giving ideas, it really, really is an effective way to do it. Again, if you don't have time to do it as the leader of the organization, or maybe that isn't your forte, find somebody that can, and you can set it up as a task force, as a committee, whatever you would like. I like task forces better than committees because committees seem to, you know, kind of get bogged down in the policies and things. But that's really important for the development of the people that you've gone out and found in your talent pool search and then now have. I know it's a lot of information dumped at once. We're kind of toward the end of what I have to offer, but I definitely would be here to, like, we can ask questions and things like that. But one of the biggest things that I've realized about succession planning, it's just all great and good. You go through the assessing, you know, the recruiting, the developing, you get these people that are ready and able, and kind of Skip, to your point, you've got some good people. But the last thing you want to do is, once you pick one, whether it's a staff member or possibly a new board member or whatever it is, just don't let them be waiting for about 73 years to actually take their position. So I was thinking about this whole production and about succession and what it means to just sit, because I actually was groomed to take over something at one point in time, and it went on and on and on. So at some point in time, for those of us that are in charge, if we really are grooming those people to take over from us, we need to actually step aside and let them take the jobs and let them take the reins. And then we have to trust that they're going to do a good job. It's going to be different than what we did on many different levels, but it's still going to be a good job. And we know we've worked with them to actually care and want to take care of the organization that we love. So that's my thing. And this would have gone a lot longer, Michael, if we'd been in person. So sorry that it's me just kind of rattling off things, but definitely would like to take questions and comments now. If you want to do it through chat, or anybody want to link in on the unmute and whatnot. Michael, do you have anything to add on that one?
Well, I mean, I know this topic comes up a lot, talking with our CTAs, and I think one of the biggest points, and you emphasized this earlier, is that succession planning just doesn't happen overnight. You can't wait till you're in a bind, because then it's just not going to work. It is being prepared and knowing, as you said, what your organization needs and preparing for that future. I mean, I love the ideas, like you said, about the grooming, and as far as like education stuff, one of the things I do each month, I send out CTA tip of the month, and actually the one I just sent out was just a reminder that USTA National has all these webinars that are out there, all these great topics to go, that you can do your own training. And as Jen said, I'm here. If I can't do something, I can find hopefully someone. Luckily, I have been around a little bit and got some connections, so we can find people to help you. And several people on this call, as I look at the list, have been a part. Leslie Shields, I want to give you a little pat on the back. Leslie, she's with the Savannah Area Tennis Association. She actually did a strategic planning session with another one of our CTAs. I wasn't available to go the dates they needed, and she did it and did a great job. So we have a lot of resources amongst ourselves to help with those type of trainings and stuff. But it's just having to do a lot of pre-work. And one of the things that personally I will say that kind of drives me crazy is I will go to a board meeting, and they have all their officers and everything, and they'll flat out tell me, well, the vice president, and they operate in that thing, like you say, the vice president usually comes to the president. Well, they've already said they're not going to ever be president. And it's like, okay, well, now you're in a stumbling block here, so it's that type of things of just being prepared, understanding what the the skill sets available and trying to align those appropriately. It's not easy. It's easy to sit here and say, do all this, and we know that, but that's why we're here to help you.
Yeah, Michael, I agree. It's not easy. It is work. While you're doing the things that you're doing right now, you're having to plan for a future that you're not 100% sure about. I mean, who would ever thought that all of a sudden gas prices would be $4.50, $5 right now, and that we may have a wheat shortage, in a week or whatever it is, right? So does that affect us? Yeah, it does, because are people going to be able to afford our programs the way that we thought they could? Are people going to have the time to do it? Are they getting second jobs? What's happening? The other thing is, back to the board members and things, honestly, be careful with the presumptive concept, because you never know when something weird might happen. And you've now made this person, feel that they're the only one that knows anything, and you haven't shared it with others. And then something weird happens, and we know weird things can happen. So, it's just, honestly, it is a lot of work. However, there's a lot of good people out there that are willing to give their time to get ready to be in those positions.
Yeah. And Jim Ham with Special Ops Tennis just put a comment in the chat. And Jim, it's a great comment. We find that leadership candidates in a volunteer position appreciate knowing about time commitments per week, per month, et cetera. And you're absolutely correct on that. And that should be part of, either the job description or the profile that Jen mentioned earlier. They should know that that expectation should be known to them.
Yeah. I'm telling you, the biggest surprise that people have is when I sit them down prior to our first annual meeting, when they're going to be president, and say, okay, here's your run of show. This is what you have to do. And then, oh, by the way, here's the first 3 months of your life, which is blah, 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 and audits and things like that. And it's nothing against them. They don't think it's going to be a cakewalk, but they truthfully had not been able to share that information with each other in the past. So now we do that. Now people see it and they understand. It's a big leap to go into, and you've got to know the timing. So I like that idea as well. Yeah.
This is Skip Patterson. A question I would have for you. It's probably a different direction, but how do you see the CTA structuring their boards and then the committees? And our situation is we had a number of very dedicated people serve in the officer and board positions for years. And now age is catching up with them. So our CTA president is using succession planning in a way of training people to get ready to assume some of these positions. And we actually modeled a lot off of what CODA has done, looking at their website, but we put in job descriptions, we put in multiple committees. I think the one thing we're struggling with is volunteers. How do you really manage that?
Yes.
Is that really an officer position, or do you manage it with the board? So any guidance? I've just sort of wondered, as we're doing the succession planning, do we have the right committees?
Yeah.
Do we really have the right structure? And is the president, what I find is we don't refer to the president that way, but the president's the chairman of the board, right? I mean, it's kind of perceived, but we don't really say that.
Yeah, typically. Yeah. That's, I would say one of the things that we did, we just went through that same situation where we had a large group of people that had continuously been in different positions within leadership of this organization, and all gave great, I mean, you guys know our people, Rex Maynard, Paul Pittman, Bob Pfeiffer, those types of people that have just been there for years with tons of knowledge, but then we're actually getting to the point of not wanting to give as much time, because now, they're going on trips, they're doing this, they're doing that, they've got grandkids. So when we redid our bylaws, we looked at how our hands were tied due to the bylaws with our board, and also how it didn't allow us to be a little bit flexible. So instead of it being, we have to have a board of 15, it became a minimum of 7, a maximum of 15. And that way, if we ran into a rut and couldn't find good volunteers, we weren't just going to stick somebody in a position, and we weren't going to have an empty position. It would just not be filled. And that helped us a lot. As far as committees, you know, Skip, you and I can chat about committees. Sometimes they're great, but they've got to be given specific duties and someone has to hold them accountable. And unfortunately, that's typically volunteer to volunteer. And a president of a board doesn't always have time to supervise. Like, it's a great idea to have like 9 or 10 committees, but then you're supervising 9 or 10 people that are then supervising, you know, 10 people on each committee. So the question is, do you need the committees for everything that you've got them put forward? There's an example for ASAE, which is the Association of Associations of Associations. Their committees are set up that they meet anywhere from 2 to 4 times a year. They brain dump and then hand all the information over to the staff, and then the staff take it, and then they work with whatever it is that they're working with. They're the subject matter experts within those things, but they don't come back and actually have to do any of the actual physical. So that's some stuff you could think about, and we can talk about that on the side. But yeah, one of the biggest things for us was changing our board makeup, because then recruitment became a little bit easier if we had a dry year. So.
Janice, I think that's a good point. We just redid the Georgia Tennis Foundation bylaws, and we actually incorporated the range of members rather than a hard number.
Yep, it's so much easier.
And I think that's going to be a help, but that's a really good piece of advice.
Yep.
There's a lot of positive doing it that way.
Hey, this is Diane Hess from Serrata in Augusta. I just wanted to say that one of the things that we did after a meeting that Michael had come to our board a few years ago and asked us about a succession plan, which we didn't have, is we made a bylaw change that the immediate past president could extend their term 1 year in an advisory capacity to the new president to kind of help with some, transition if the vice president didn't step up, or even if they did. The other thing that I've started doing this year is doing a monthly president report to our board. Not necessarily, information based for them to let them know other things that, I may not bring up in a meeting,
Right.
but also serving kind of as a legacy on my part, I guess, that the, new president can go back on. Because as you said, there's so many things at the beginning of the year, a lot of the paperwork, the budget, the submitting of grants and so forth. So at least trying to leave a bit of a paper trail of things that were done that someone can
Right.
look back on.
That's awesome. I like that idea. We also just implemented that under our new president this year. Also, you have a board meeting every quarter. Well, there's so much that goes on before that board meeting that when you send this huge staff report or huge committee reports or whatever it is, people can't even take it all in. So now we're doing kind of a every 3 to 4 week kind of update, a couple of social media highlights. Hey, please share, things like that. Just also celebrating what you've done. We don't do that enough. We always just report out about numbers and this and that, but celebrate the big wins. One of our biggest celebrations this year is, so far, is that during National Tennis Month, we were second to Georgia in the number, and we were very proud of this because you guys are always first. We were second to Georgia in the number of National Tennis Month events that we had. Usually we're third to North Carolina, but we had passed that one. So so that was a big thing. We all celebrated. So but yeah, that's a very smart thing to do, and it allows people to be involved and to hear and to know what's happening. Back in the day when the presidents kept all their information themselves and they didn't pull people in, I don't know whether it was about power struggles or just, the way they were or whatnot. It can't happen that way anymore. There's too much information that needs to be shared. And if you don't have staff, then you don't have consistency. At least within the staff, the people that have staff, they have at least one person that knows what happened last year, that, can read the board minutes and interpret the, chicken scratch that is put into those sometimes with what actually was said. So yeah, I like that. Thanks, Diane.
Any more questions for Jen? Any departing words, Jen, you'd like to say?
No, I just thought people would laugh more at the Prince Charles and Queen thing, but that was my
They were
own.
on mute. They were laughing.
We were laughing, yes.
Oh my
You
God.
just couldn't hear it.
And
He
not
just
on-
has
not
been
on
waiting
video.
since he was born to be king, and she's never given it up. No, I'm just kidding. I actually, yeah, whatever. They're doing their thing. No, I appreciate it, Michael. I thank you again. I wish we'd done it in person, but next year maybe, right?
Right. Well, Jen, thank you. Great information. And thank you all, everyone, for joining the call. As I've done in the last ones, as soon as I have the recording of this and the presentation deck online, I will send you out an email so you know. And this actually concludes our virtual CTDW series offerings for 2022. I hope everyone has enjoyed both Series 1 and Series 2. That you got a lot of information out of it. All those presentations will still be on our website. So if you'd like to go back and review them or share them with someone else, you certainly can. And as Jen said, this is always so much better in person, and hopefully, and I look forward to seeing everyone in February of 2022. Fingers crossed everything goes well. And if some of you are early planners like I am, that actual dates are February 11th and 12th. You can go ahead and put it on your calendar if you'd like. But again, thank you for joining us, and take care, and we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Jen.